ODI office in Florida. Good to see everyone. I'll be helping managing the chat as well as the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
I was just going to say once again, I'm also joined by Ali Brazo and Andre Cohen as co-hosts on this call and this conversation. So, welcome to those two as well. Andre, you want to say anything before we get started? And I'll give it till about five after or so before we get going on the actual conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for this conversation. I think it's important for us to lean in on difficult topics, and particularly when we start talking about disparities and what those look like and what's the rationale behind them. I think leaning into this conversation, even though it can be somewhat intimidating or a scary space, or maybe we don't even recognize other people's experiences, is great to be in a room where we're going to do this. And I think this is the kind of thing that makes Mayo, uh, among those top 10 hospitals, right? So Diversity Inc. just gave us that award and that kind of thing. And so I think leaning into these tough topics is what will keep us sharp. And so I'm glad we're able to wrestle with this today. So.
I see a few new faces. Andrew, thank you for joining us. Kabuika is on now. Deborah, thank you for joining us. JTN, I'm still wondering who that is. So as you come on, go ahead and mute yourself and use the chat box as a way to say hi to everyone and chat with everyone. This is as if you've been with us before. This is truly a conversation that we're trying to have with everyone. So whether it is using the audio and visual or using the chat box, feel free to use the chat box as much as you can and as much as you want to carry conversations on in there as well. And we will have many opportunities as we go through the conversation to give all of you an opportunity to chime in and share your own experiences, your own perspectives, um, and what you heard or what you are seeing locally, whether you sit in Florida or Arizona or in the health system or in Rochester or somewhere else in the U.S. that you're sitting and working from, because we are, as many of you are well know, we are dispersed this time of year, right? And working remotely. And so I'm just glad that you are taking the opportunity or the time out of your day to join us on this in this conversation. So
Sweet.
about one more minute and then we'll get going. Again, this is recorded, so we will be recording this and we will be chopping up the conversation and posting it, reposting it on the video exchange so that others can catch up and listen and see the conversation as well at a later time. All right, it is 12:05, so I'm gonna get going. And thank you for joining us once again. This is Laura Lee. I'm from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion here at Mayo Clinic, and I'm being joined by all of you, by Ali Brazo and Andre Cohen, who are my co-hosts on this call. And we are going to be looking at or talking and continue the conversation around everybody in. Um, and this particular session, we're going to be focused on behind the mask, why men of color, especially Hispanic and Latino men and Black men, are hesitant to wear, especially homemade masks, right? Even with the CDC and states and governments coming out and saying the importance of a mask, and all of us saying the importance of a mask, why that is. And so we're going to have a conversation about that. Ali and Andre will jump in as well and have and lead those type of that conversation today. But we're really going to use this as an opportunity for all of you to share and your own perspectives, as well as questions you might have for Andre and Ali and I, and anybody else on the call, really. And again, for those of you who haven't joined us before, this is meant to really be conversational. So there will be times during the call where we will stop and pause and give all of you an opportunity to chime in and raise your hand if you would like to chime in, just like this, or you can electronically raise your hand in the participant box, and we can call on you there. Or if you'd like to just post questions in the chat box, you can certainly use that as well as we go through the session. So Ali raised his hand, so I'm going to call on Ali. I see that, Ali. Uh, go ahead.
Probably if I unmute, you'll hear me.
I was just saying.
I was just demonstrating how it works, that if you go in and you say raise your hand, it'll put a little blue hand up, and it lets us know that we need to get you into the conversation.
Yeah.
Just wanted to show that how that's demonstrated.
So Lauren, I have a question, right? So
Yes, sir.
you did a session probably, I don't know, it's probably been 8 months ago, based on a Harvard Business Review article about this idea of masking, or I forgot what was the term that was used in that session. Do you recall?
Well, the article was looking at this idea of basically masking, pretending to be someone else who you're not, right?
Right.
Okay, so how many people do that when we come to work or even any environment?
Yep. So I think it's interesting that we're talking about this mask because in a symbolic sense, we all wear masks, right? So I come into work, I, in a sense, put on my mask to participate with my colleagues, and we share the mask of what that means to work at Mayo. However, even in that mask, with our badges, our uniforms, our attire, there's still ways that people have their uniqueness kind of show up. And in some ways, they're accepted, and in other ways they're not, right? And so, when we start talking about this idea of mask and the barriers that people face or challenges that they face wearing those, I do harken back to the mask that we wear every day. And as an African American, I know that I can only act as mainstream will allow me to participate, right? So, I wear a shirt and tie just about every day, even on family excursions and that kind of stuff, partly because that's my uniform, but it also defends me from folks who have some stereotypical views of folks who they think look like me, or folks who don't look like people who wear ties, collared shirts, and jackets, right? So, yeah. Right. So I just, and I am curious to what does the symbolism of a mask, a physical mask, how does that change from from so-called ethnic or racial groups to other racial groups, given some of the larger pieces. So that was a long diatribe, but that was just something I was thinking about, that we all wear masks, so to speak, to kind of fit into our environment. But even that, yeah. So I did about that.
All right. So I see a couple of hands up, and I'm gonna keep your thoughts in mind, and I'll come back to you in a little bit. But I want to officially kick us. A couple of things that I want to share with you. If you have not already seen the ODI newsletter that just came out last night or this morning, for some of you, you will see in there that I had an editorial piece that really looked at this idea and calling out this idea of the mask, right? And I'm going to share with you right now. You guys have probably seen either this picture or similar pictures in the past couple of weeks here. And in this picture, obviously, I'm going out for a run. You see the surgical mask and gloves on the side there, and off screen, significant other says, "Don't forget your mask, honey." And the gentleman goes out for a run, putting on his mask, and really the mask of a white male, right? And this is in reference to the Ahmaud Arbery shooting in Georgia that we've all been, probably many of us, and you have been following. And then if you then for that, and now we're talking about the whole actual face mask of in response to COVID-19, we've at the beginning that when the CDC and others have put out these recommendations around wearing a homemade mask or masks, you see on the left-hand side there from Vox, you see an article based out of New York, where senators were demanding a solution to police stopping black men wearing and not wearing masks. So whether you wear a mask or you don't, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? And you'll see in there that article, and I have it in the link of linked into my editorial to that actual article, and so you'll see in there that it really is about this heightened sense of black men being targeted for even just wearing a mask. And we'll have a conversation talking a little bit about that. And the second piece down there, it conjures up every racial stereotype for black men, homo mask, right? So you think about when you see on the stereotypes you see that plays out on our TV shows and whatnot, and the gangsters with the modern day gangs with the blue or red handkerchiefs or whatever else that might be, those are also plays into those stereotypes we may have, even just as we are abiding by those rules, but are being targeted simply because of the way some individuals look. So I'm gonna just wanted to kind of start out with that, and I'm gonna stop sharing, just to kind of get us thinking about what does that mask. Back to Andre's point, not only the physical mask, but the imagery of the mask. Andre, Ali?
I think it's interesting that you talk about putting on the mask. You know, very often I have been told that because conversation that we have when we're amongst friends and colleagues outside of the workplace, and that mask that we put on when we're inside the workplace to ensure that we have the correct speak. So, you know, to coin a phrase, and I think that's very valid. As an African American, I am very concerned. You know, I've already had to have the conversation about my sons wearing masks out in public. Be careful. Be careful what your deportment is. Be careful where you go. Where are you putting the mask on? Because depending on the neighborhood or the community, there may be a different perception of how they're perceived. And, you know, this is very similar to the conversation I had to have around the hoodie. And, you know, I would love to be in 2020 in a society where these aren't real concerns, but they are real concerns that a lot of families may or may not have to have. But it has been my experience and exposure that with my sons, one is 28, one is 24, the conversation has to be had in order for me to prepare them to be safe in their own community.
In his reference about the hoodie, Ali, when Trayvon Martin was shot, Ali was actually working with the Urban League in the Central Florida, and so was really a figure in that conversation and in that community, having and leading the Trayvon Martin shooting, the hoodie, and right.
President at the time, and during a time where a lot of racial tension flared up around this. And, you know, the one thing was to create cohesion and come together to where that culminated into a 15,000 person march in Sanford peacefully to call for justice. And, you know, we should be able to rally around the fact that COVID has no ethnicity where the media may try to say it disproportionately attacks one sector of the community over the other by lifestyle. Those are misnomers. Lifestyle and health has to do with every single person who is susceptible to diabetes, to high blood pressure, to cardiac disease, to respiratory illnesses. But the reason that it disproportionately has impacted some communities, they're the frontline workers. Many of you on this meeting right here are our very front line out there making a difference. And as I look at our Mayo Clinic photos, we come from all backgrounds and in all disciplines, and that's from the housekeeper to the surgeon to the respiratory therapist, the anesthesiologist, the nurse anesthetists that are making a difference to help keep our front lines protected. But being on the front line of that one, Laura, was very interesting because the conversation again was about dispelling a myth or a misnomer that if someone wore a hoodie, they were going to be trying to affect crime or be mischievous. I have mine here with uh, the mask covers this up, and as feelings of uneasiness seeing a person dressed with a mask. You know, we have to remember that we're masking to protect ourselves and protect others.
Yeah. It does, and I don't want to seem or appear to be hyperbolic in any way, but this conversation and having the talk. So I have two young daughters, 5 years old. She'll be six, and then I have she is 18 months, right? So I had these two beautiful, just little gems. And so my wife and I are talking about when do we have to start having the talk about being a woman in this society. And so as I think about like wearing these masks, kind of come to me that I think oppressive systems kind of thrust that the talk for women is very similar to the talk that that black people specifically, but people of color oftentimes have to have with their kids about how to interact with this majority culture or this majority society, right? Drink too much of this or that, or really having these rules about her being her. So interesting that we keep systems where the system actually individuals may not necessarily be the problem, right? And so that was something as Ali was, this wearing the mask and those that kept coming to my mind, like we're constantly telling people how to not get hurt by a system, really addressing young people have their sense of invincibility to through stereotype threat, right? Picture me this way, and there is a thought, man, and I get the concept, right, and so it becomes this kind of Georgia, and one of my brothers is in the two, the African recognize that there are already stereotypes that people have against them, and so make sure that they're in the safe. You know what? I would even and get which and we'll see like that. But I think the systemic racism sets the tone, not trust institutions not always played their exactly what the medical communities experience similar things, but it is certainly pronounced in American communities. Yes,
that person. Attributed to the fact that we are such in racial relations that are making choices that actually put themselves into harm's way. So it's holistic.
Sorry, I'm experience, and regardless if you're wearing a suit and tie or want to chime in before we move to the conversation?
She says, so how can we help prevent negative outcomes? That's through education in our circles of friends. The way that you stamp out racism is to talk about allyship. It's being allies to stamp it out. To stamp out really, and when you get to the root of it, it's stamping out hate and bias. And I think one of the great things to do is elected officials. So if you're some a public campaign in some of the states, I think Minnesota would be a great one to have, like the governor and others, stand with people of all backgrounds and say, respect the man. One of the ways that we overcame the hoodie was I wore a hoodie, and but earlier in my work where I was talking with about stereotypes. It is the stereotypes that are that are sometimes mistakes. We have to begin to eliminate those so that people, to Deborah's point earlier and Danielle's point earlier, is that circle of friends has to become educated to get outside of that circle to learn more about other people and to embrace them. So that's how we can be preventative, have preventative action. Unfortunately, no, but can we try to lessen them? Yes, we can. It is through public outreach of our leadership, of others, and respecting others. It would be interesting in COVID-19 Facebook sites if we started posting groups at Mayo with a mask on and saying that, I'm protecting you, not attacking you. My intent is to protect you, not to attack you. And to show that with different groups. Right now, the only outward appearance that we can really show is the melanin that's within our skin. And but I think by showing women this protects you, it doesn't attack you. Those are strong ways of standing up to the misnomer that somebody's going to do something ill will to you because they got a mask on. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think it gets there.
Your position is also that we have to take cognitive control, right? So unconscious bias, we have implicit bias that are in our systems. And so ultimately it does to take control of that. Direction of our goals. And so You have to have a goal to, not succumb to homophobia, even gender in your mind. If we or change the goal or recognize what the goal is if those two things aren't congruent, right? And so I think the work that needs to be done.
Samira brings up another good point because now that we're thinking about the negative effect of PPE or wearing a mask for have been hesitant to engage. I like the idea, Kobika, of a collage of faces, but wouldn't that be a cool movement through Mayo to take pictures with each
At a
protect each
distance.
other? I think that
I was gonna say I really like Ali Joran sharing parallel to that. I think the spirit is that we need to normalize. We need to normalize compassion in this time of anxiety and uncertainty. So wherever I go, I feel to normalize what it entails to not support animal slaughter, which caused this COVID epidemic, and it it makes, even though I'm a butt of a lot of jokes and whatnot, that I stand in the side of compassion. I stand in the side of health, and stand with others that we we need to think out of the box and change our behavior and stand up for justice and stand up for eating compassionately, eating healthy, and taking care of.
Thank you for that. The other time here that I want to turn us to is that symbolic mask, right? And that Andre kicked us off with, and Deborah talked a little bit about, and Miguel talked about too. That symbolic, the so I get out there, bow hunt, deer, turkey, you name it. Store called Cabela's, that's fairly well known. And I used to live real close to one. I went shopping. It was the only male of color in the. I usually don't, it doesn't really bother me. I go in. I was looking through the archery section, but slowly walking through and looking at the camouflage section. All of a sudden, I hear walking down the aisle towards me these two closer to me. They right, simple, just like that. It was quick, couple seconds. That impact ruined those couple seconds ruined my whole experience. I was I was in suit and tie, coming back from suit and tie, looked like and what that happened, not only that it stopped there, all of a sudden, my usually 1 hour shopping trip cut down to about 15 minutes. And then I got up to the register to ring up my stuff. The young man behind the register, again, white male, was checking out the other person ahead of me, didn't say anything to me. When I got up, put my stuff up there, he turns to the white and says, "Sir, when I'm done here, I'll be right with you." Okay? Says nothing to me when I was waiting in line, but turns and says something to the person behind me. So even to fit in, to not come across as being the other, I still was perceived as the other in that text. And but I think that's simple. That's a conversation with that example. So, Andre.
No, I think it's very similar. Being as well, street and approaching a young white female, and she took her purse and moved it to the opposite side of her. With a group of individuals, and because I was walking towards you. And again, it comes back to systemic racism in this country. He does more hunting than I've ever thought, but I know he's an enthusiast of this store and of this.
You know, and I think there's some could it be that going back to what I was saying before about being goal oriented, like to be with people who are like us, to become systemic racism. It's another way of being. Not a person. In the cycle that it doesn't matter who's on top or who's on the bottom, it's still going to be um, I hope that as individuals, seen us in session. I wasn't born black, but I'm black because I was in America, right? So if I was born in Mexico, right? So for us to bust this system wide open by being critical and for our neighbors, we're doing things that are congruent with our goals. What is your family's diversity plan? Do that have shaped how we think and act with each other, right? I feel like all is lost.
Stories you want to share, whether it's about the physical mask or the symbolic mask that we've been talking about and that impact it has.
Please share. This is a conversation at you.
I always wear a mask and I always say hello to strangers. Just how are you doing, or just some compliment. Because even though they cannot see my smile, actually they should be able to hear my.
I was going to agree about that too. I always see the looks and all this. Yes, how did you? I like your shoes, or even if they don't answer me, sometimes they keep stopping me all the time. You don't have to talk to everyone, Mama. I think this is what we love people and we're proud of it. I think up the kids being proud of who you are, and it's not easy. Once you do that and question your lunchbox how green it is, or they question the hummus that you have, for the kids at school. I think this is proud. This is who I am. And they come home and yeah, the kids ask me about my lunchbox today, or bring these and I think the fear is always there, but once they see you, and they're always going to say, "Oh, way you're Arabic," and I say, "Well, how does Arabic look?" I think sound like you're Asian, or you don't. I think these questions that we hear that's how it brings us together. The more they see you, the more they talk to you, and you say that. Well, not everyone who's Arabic is going to be the same way. I think that's how they're starting to realize. Oh, okay, that makes sense. She is Arabic, but there are other Arabics. The whole info of your identity, I think, would show up too, and that's how we normalize it. I have many stories, but I think I love how Andre says it's how you normalize it at home with your diversity plan at home. Like my daughter from an Arab woman, and this is how you normalize it. You put in a little things like cookies or ethnic greetings in there.
Mm-hmm.
So did I lose anyone, or yeah? So I think this living at home, I love this at schools and education. I think this is important.
Thank you. Did I? Okay.
Go out, my one of the, I try to something that is interesting to the other person, and then I bring it up and say, "Oh my gosh, I love your mask. What is it? What is the movie or whatever?" And we have and we talk about it. I was trying to find bits to mention one of my experience coming to Mayo Clinic, it's actually has to do with the symbolic mask. One of, while I was being interviewed, I was actually interviewing all of you guys too at the same time, just to let you know. and and that was to look at, okay, are they really, they are attracted by my very diversified world, but can they handle it? Um, so those were, and we listening to, can they handle this? I mean, this is really nice about the other way, that you have to do this way. Does an article has to be like that because here we used to this? And I'm like, I don't write like this. I write like that because it's so much more interesting and because so I mean it has been an interesting experience to see that something different, but there's also that willingness to learn as well. So it's about engaging people first on the human level, saying, you know, we are all in this together. We, we have connections, we have similarities. And then when you come from that level, you're bringing, you can go from that. Brings me to point that meeting we had just this morning. Now, Mayo Clinic is ranked seventh as the top hospital and health system. Good, but we can do much further. So let's go for that. Let's aim for that.
A couple more experience I want to share.
I have one experience related also. But he liked me. He said, "Gonna pick it up at the marina. We'll be ready. And if something's wrong, just talk to." So the boat, it was ready. I went try it, and it wasn't right. So I went back to the marina. I said, "Oh, the boat." You cannot believe it how offended they were that I was asking, to do the service right. They were like, "Oh, you, what do you know about boats? You never had a boat." They were making assumptions many years, and then I can tell if a boat is tuned or not. On the lake, I have more experiences like that with other fishermen that I will get to a good spot, and then more boats will come. Kind of feels intimidating, and they're like, "Hey, you're new here. You people fish. The carps are on the other side. You should go fishing over there." Just really, really. Uh, because no matter where, I never had really a good felt welcoming or part of a community. Yeah. So I ended donating the boat to the United Way. But yeah,
I was gonna say I will come fish with you next time I'm down. almost 1 o'clock, so I just want to thank the conversation. There's something from the as well. The next conversation is not next Friday. It'll be the Friday after. So we'll have a week break, giving us some time to do some prep work and production work. We have for you on the lineup is Bruce. More specifically about what Minnesota is doing to address out of this to really start to create more equity. Now, thank you again. I don't know. I'm speaking for Andre and Allie too, but we had a great. All right, gentlemen. I think it's just 3.
And thought it was the only time being Bass Pro Shops. But you know, Danielle's comment in the chat was really to expend our time to those that are with those that appear unmovable, emulate inclusiveness over.
May
May never.
You know, individuals that